So here we have some output from a VLAN. It says show spanning tree VLAN 20. And what it gives us is some information regarding this VLAN, its root ID, bridge ID, etc. So what we're being asked to do is determine which statement is true. And we'll start with D. And the statement is switch A is not the root bridge because not all of the interface roles are designated. That's not true because not all of the interface roles have to be designated for it to be a root bridge. All right, now let's evaluate statement C. The MAC address of the root bridge is this MAC address number. And if we look at the root ID and the address, you can see that the MAC address for the root ID does not match the one in the question. So that is not true. Now let's evaluate statement B. VLAN 20 is running the per VLAN spanning tree protocol. There is no such thing as the per VLAN spanning tree protocol, so this answer is incorrect. It is not true. Now we're evaluating statement A, which we know is correct. The FA011 role confirms that switch A is the root bridge for VLAN 20. And that's true, and if we look here, we can see that it is the root ID, and it lists port 11, 0/11 as the root port. This is a troubleshooting problem where we have to read a scenario and then find the correct answer out of 5. So it starts with a technician is troubleshooting host connectivity issues on the switches. The hosts in VLANs 10 and 15 on switch 11 are unable to communicate with hosts on the same VLANs on switch 12. Hosts in the admin VLAN are able to communicate. The port to VLAN assignments are identical on the two switches. What could be the problem? So we need the most important information to solve this problem. And in this case, it's the hosts in the admin VLAN are able to communicate. So now that we know what the problem is and what information we need to resolve it, we can start looking at the statements that are made and determining which one is correct. So if you look at question 1, it says the FA01 port is not operational on one of the switches. So they're the ports. So there are FA01 ports, and you can see there's one on each switch. And we know that VLAN 20 is able to communicate over that link. So the FA1 port is not operational is not the answer. If we look at B, the link connecting the switches has not been configured as a trunk. We know that's incorrect because VLAN 20 is still talking to VLAN 20 on the other switch. C says at least one port needs to be configured in VLAN 1 for VLANs 10 and 15 to be able to communicate. Well, once again, this is looking at VLAN 20, and does it need anything configured in VLAN 1? No, it doesn't. It's able to connect without that. So that's not correct. D states, port fast Ethernet 01 needs to be configured as an access link on both switches. So if we look at the chart, we can see that FA01's in admin 20, but it's not in 10 or 15. So that's it. That's the difference between this question and all the other questions. Now we'll review answer E, and it states that a router is required for hosts on switch 11 in VLANs 10 and 15 to communicate with the hosts on the same VLAN on switch 12. And we know that's not correct because VLAN 20 is still able to communicate. The question states, which 3 are valid modes for a switch port used as a VLAN trunk? Choose 3. So we need to identify what's the most important thing that we should know about this question. So the most important thing we need to know is that it involves a VLAN trunk, and therefore will have a different configuration than a regular switch port. VLAN trunk ports can carry traffic between VLANs on other switches, but can only carry traffic to specific ports in the VLAN on another switch. So here we have two switches, and they both have VLAN trunk ports connected to each other. VLAN trunk ports can carry traffic between VLANs on other switches, but can only carry traffic to specific ports in the VLAN on another switch. FA01 carries VLAN 13 traffic between it and switch B, and switch B also has members of VLAN 13, which it carries to switch A. So the protocol that allows switch B and switch A to have the same VLAN is called the Dynamic Trunking Protocol. Dynamic Trunking Protocol has three acceptable states: auto, desirable, and on. So we know that the answers are auto, on, and desirable. We're looking at two hosts on a connected network, and we're wondering which of these three answers apply to the network device A. This question primarily refers to IPv4 subnetting. This question asks us to identify three correct answers, and it's relying on us to subnet in this case, and then determine if with the subnetting we've applied, if the answer is correct. So we know that one subnet equals 32 bits. And in the example I put here, this is in binary format, and it shows us that 3 octets, 1, 2, and 3, are all ones, and the last is all zeros. And that indicates to us that this is a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. If you're not familiar with IP subnetting, you might be wondering how we got from a bunch of ones and zeros to 255.255.255.0. So we used the magic of the powers of 2 to give a value to each position in the octet, starting with 128 and going down to 1. And then, if the bit is on, which all of them are in this case, you add up the numbers that are assigned to each bit, which in this case adds up to 255. So when we return to the slide with the hosts and the network, we see that the 255.255.255. something is present in almost each question, with the exception of the last one, where the third octet is 254.